To go like that, and I'm going to say, here we go. Welcome everyone to the Inside Ride. This is a top 20 training Webishow focused on what's really going on in education and what's really going on in our Inside Ride, aka our inner lives. We are individuals that are very curious about what's happening in our own inner lives, and we would hope other people on the streets we meet pay attention to theirs. We're thrilled to have you for our fourth wonderful Webishow. Tonight's format will be as follows. Like always, we will have a thought of the week by the wise sage Thomas Doubting Cody. We'll do a little light biggity banter. There'll be an intro of this week's guests. We have two guests, Grace and Don. I can't even sit still and think calm thoughts to get them on here. I can't wait. They're going to be on. And then we'll wrap up telling you about next week's Webishow. My name is Kevin Brennan. I'm one of the owners, authors, writers, speakers for Top 20 Training. We're a social emotional learning company. And this is one of the founders, Thomas Cody.
Not really. I just live in Kevin's backyard. And so he let me be on the show tonight. I'm Tom, and I'm old. It never gets old, though, when the sun comes out and the snow starts melting. I know we're going to get dumped on again up here in Minnesota, but it was fun today to look at some rivers running in the streets. My thought for the day is lead with curious. If you follow us on Twitter, that was my 1-minute shot this morning. I talked to a principal this morning that's got some tough conversations this week, and she asked me one thing she could do. And I said, well, whatever you're going to do, lead with curious. Tough conversation. I told her I don't know that I've ever made a problem in my life by doing that. My wife would be quick to tell you I've made plenty of problems by not being curious and leading with being right. So my thought of the day is tomorrow, wherever you are, whatever you do for a living, something tough comes up, lead with curious. Ask a question.
Love it. Love it.
Kevin, what's going on with you? Any bumps in your road this week?
Well, my wife was picking up two kids from the school. My daughter was riding shotgun, so it was me and my little 7-year-old boy, Colin. We were having dinner together, and he goes, Dad, can we have dessert? I'm like, we're going to have dessert. And he's been waiting for these ice cream sandwiches thingies. And then I said, all right, let me get you your quesadilla. And he goes, why? What? No. And I was like, dude, this is something we've worked on over and over and over and over and over again. You having the ability to say okay and not get whiny. And so I had to introduce this concept of consequence to him. And all I wanted to do, Tom, was give him some ice cream. All I wanted to do was see his shiny face, lapping it up, chocolate in his eyebrows. But I realized at that moment, if I could stay curious with him and ensure that he understood what was occurring in the moment, meaning the lesson, I'm creating a healthy kid for more of his life. So it was a powerful moment because you forget how we learn to handle mistakes as a young kid, and that's often through fright, denial, blame. But hopefully little Colin understood it, and we'll be ready for ice cream tomorrow.
Let me remind you something too. Your job is not to be his friend.
Right.
Your job is to be his dad. And at that moment, he didn't need ice cream. He maybe needed consequences.
Yep.
Every parent dreams that their daughter will take them to lunch when they're 30, and that'd be great, but that's like bonus.
Yeah.
Your job is to keep them alive, keep them healthy, and let them grow up. So good job, buddy.
Well, I do what I can when I can. Tom.
All right. Tonight,
intro.
There is a small, tiny school with a small graduating class out to the western suburbs of St. Paul called Wayzata High School. 3,700 students, which is the total graduating class for the last 100 years at some of the schools we work at. We're going to introduce you now to Dawn Johnson and Grace Lephart, two of Wayzata's finest. And here they come. I met these two, I'll call them outstanding educators, years ago out, either we were doing a training and they came to it or whatever, but I have been amazed at what these two and their little, let's just call it the tribe out at Wayzata has done for a variety of kids. So first question is introduce yourself. What do you do? Grace, let's start with you.
My name is Grace Lephart, and I am in my 8th year of teaching at Wayzata High School. I teach English. The last 5 years, I've had all ninth graders in a program called SOAR, which is part of our alternative learning program.
Cool.
Awesome. English. Hey, former English teacher right here. All
There we
love.
go.
I'm afraid Dawn is too. Here we go.
Yeah.
Dawn, what do you do out there?
I am Dawn Johnson. I am also an English teacher. This is my 7th year as a teacher at Wayzata, but my 11th year working there. And my teaching is a second career for me. And alongside Grace, we also serve as instructional coaches at Wayzata High School.
Cool.
Cool.
Who are you instructing?
Anybody that'll take it.
So you work
Exactly.
with you work with teachers.
We do.
We work with teachers and anything that they want to do. We actually work with teachers and students. And our focus is to be work alongside administrators and other leaders in the building to be, a voice, an advocate for students and teachers that want to try anything new or do anything outside of their comfort zone. And our goal is to make sure that everyone feels successful in meeting the needs of their kids.
Now,
Cool.
Kevin, we're not going to talk about semicolons just because we got 3 English teachers. That's
All right.
out the window.
Well, I
We
got
They're
wanna
so
talk about-
sexy, Tom. They're
No,
so
no,
no.
sexy.
That's out. That's out.
It's a cool thing. The dot, the hanging.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Pause of a thought. Yeah, right. Hey,
Mhm.
social emotional learning, whether it's top 20, has pervaded the classrooms for both Dawn and Grace. Walk us through, because you used to just be English people. What was the turnaround? Like, what happened? Because now you're big. We got to get the whole child. Maybe you're already doing that in English, but take me through. Who wants to start? Tell me how that's happened.
And let
Don,
me,
I feel, yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
let me reframe that question like this. Schools usually teach subjects, English, language arts, science, whatever it may be. Just like businesses usually have person that makes drawings or produces this or mass produces that. What was the thing that said we got to do a little bit more? We got to do something different, a little bit more, because we have folks in the panel, or excuse me, attendees that are in business. We have majority educators. It's the same conversation. What forced you to kind of just say we gotta change this up a little bit?
I think for Grace and I, if you don't mind if I jump in, I mean, Grace and I met as avid tutors. So
This is what I was going to say.
Yeah. So we started out at working with really diverse learners, kids that would be first in their families to go to college, not necessarily keen to traditional education, may not always see themselves as successful high school students. And, our heart really melts for any student at Wayzata, any student at all, but especially those kids, because what we saw in them were just these tremendous assets that they brought with them.
Sure.
That maybe weren't being measured necessarily in an academic system that traditional school or maybe before COVID measured them. And we saw them dancing, we saw them speaking in second languages, we saw them sharing their family, all the things they were doing for their family. And I think Grace and I, as moms and as women who are a little bit older, we know and we feel really empowered by the gifts that our kids bring to us every day. And I think from that experience, whether we came to it kind of already knowing this or whether we came to it through those kids, but we really, really found that that's our why, right? Our why is to make sure that the kids, those people skills, those assets that they're bringing to school, those things that we know are going to make them successful in the real world are what we can do for them as teachers. How do we pull those out and how do we celebrate them? So yeah, Shakespeare is important, the semicolon's important, all that stuff is important. But honestly, we work with people who don't know how to use a semicolon. We work with people who don't remember Shakespeare, and they are just fine.
Totally.
The enduring quality that those people have and that these kids have is that ability, those EQ skills.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Grace. She
Beautiful.
wants to
Nope,
add.
that was, it just makes me smile, Don,
So-
because
Yeah,
that's
so
the story I would have told.
So how did top 20 fit that? Like you saw this stuff, you got these quote soft skills, emotional skills, people smarts. Grace,
So I
how did
think,
that, yeah, where did that come from?
yeah, so I think, we knew that's what we were looking for. And then I personally, then I got plugged in because Tyler Shepard and Allison Gillespie, who Allison was at that time an AP at Wayzata High School. She's now, I think, the assistant superintendent or a curriculum director up in up north. But they found you guys, and I did come to a summer training in St. Paul. And then Dawn and I and Billy Lar and Tracy Bird, Tracy's now in Minneapolis, Billy's still with us at Wayzata. We started using it with our summer school program, our Step Up program for 8th graders coming into 9th grade. But really at that very first training, I drank all the Kool-Aid. And then what's really cool about what's happened at Wayzata is I'm gonna say it's been bottom up rather than top down, like grassroots. So there were these little pockets that started then, so we were using it in the alternative program. Dawn was using it in some ways, and then our students started saying, like, this should be a class, like everybody needs this, right?
Students?
So then students, yeah, Dawn could speak to that a little more specifically. But then we started offering it as an elective. And then after that, we trained the whole staff. So now we have this common language across our building. So it looks like all these different things. You've got a standalone elective course. Next year, top 22, or, like we have a class we're starting just for juniors and seniors who've taken the starter course. But then you also have all these teachers across our building embedding it in their curriculum.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Grace, Dawn, you said you drank the Kool-Aid. Give me one thing from top 20 that grabbed you, because something hooked you and suddenly now you're in the boat. Like, what was it? Can you think of one thing? Put you on the spot here.
Well, I'm sort of famous for the frame story, I think. It's just so powerful with our, particularly with our diverse learners in the alternative program. We talk about reframing almost every day. And when we trained the staff as a whole, we brought Tom and Willow out, but then we've done some additional sessions with our staff. And I told a story, we think 4 or 5 years ago, about reframing with my teenage son. And today at school, a teacher came up to me and said, "Do you remember that time you talked about your son, Evan, and how you had to reframe? Well, I just did that with my 9-year-old today, and I thought of you the whole time." So yeah, I think for me, probably that is the story I tell. Reframing is what we talk about all the time.
And that teacher doesn't remember 4 years ago when they did EpiPens, insurance, and bloodborne pathogens, but she remembers something stuck,
Yeah.
Real quick, just clarifying the frame. It's just the whole idea that we all have a frame through which we view the world. And so much depends on how we see the situation. How we see influences what we feel, then what we do, and then what we get. So what you're saying is, if we could see it a little differently, if we can, like Tom said at the beginning, get curious, potentially we see something, a person, a human, differently. We see more. So cool. What about
Dawn? How about you?
What about you?
Well,
Yeah.
I agree with the frame. I think I agree with the frame, and I also agree with IQ plus EQ equals success. We share the bike story with kids all the time. We challenge them to consider a hypothetical situation where they would, as a class, we could all earn $1 million if we can ride these bikes down to Minneapolis, and then we show them a picture of the bikes and they're all missing the back tire, and the kids are really quick to be like, well, we could give each other, we could take one tire and put it on the back, and we're like, see, you're already using your EQ skills. But I want to tag on to Grace's frame, because one of the things that I think that particular strategy, and we call them strategies at the high school, has done for both me and Grace and many other teachers, it's really challenged us. And we say this as instructional coaches, like, be vulnerable, like, tell the kids where you've had to reframe, pull out your teenage self, pull out the time. I pull out the times as a teenager that I had to live between two homes and how hard that was. Pull out the times when you've been challenged. And that I think that vulnerability really speaks to what we as teachers owe our kids, and how we really help them develop their EQ skills. And when we think about being like culturally responsive teachers and embedding that into our EQ work, you know, how do we be vulnerable, but also be vulnerable to the truths of our kids? And so I think that's really what the frame has done for both Grace and I, as well as many of our colleagues, is really challenged us to be like, we don't have to be perfect, and our kids will actually benefit from us seeing our own struggles.
And that's I think that's part of the key for an educator, you know, or a leader to someone working for them, is authenticity and vulnerability, because you two are very authentic. You know, I believe the words you're saying, the stories are true, and a kid can smell that. You know,
Yeah.
Kids are the best. They know if someone's false. They know if someone's just blowing smoke. So it's a gift that you two are safe enough and feel okay enough to be healthily vulnerable to crack it open, so then they can. Cool.
Here's one thing the YZ is doing, and you two, and it's not just you two. You've mentioned many names, but you've cracked the code on, this is not top 20 social, emotional, whatever you want to call it, is not for, quote, low kids. It's not for, quote, high flyers. It's not for kids who don't have a good home life. It's for everybody. And what I love about what you've done is, from the bottom up, the spread has gone from ALC. And Grace, tell us a little bit about those ALC kids, because they struggle, right? I've met some of these birds.
Yeah, I mean, they're kids. It's funny because they do, like, school for a lot of them is not their jam, right? It's not their happy place.
Right.
They haven't had success there. They don't feel belonging there. But our program, I don't know if this is unique or not, but as a school within a school, you know, our kids, I have some incredibly academically talented kids who, for social, emotional, or mental health reasons, are with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I've got kids, every year I've been teaching in this program, I've had a student experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
Right. I have kids who've had, you know, a nomadic experience. So then they are deficient academically or behind in academic skills, but just because of circumstances. So, but they're, you know, it's a superpower. Those kids have superpowers.
And meanwhile, Dawn, you were in the Compass program, where the kids dress up, entrepreneurs, they got mentors in the business world. These are like 38-year-old juniors that you're teaching. And yet they're getting the same charge out of this. They're like lapping this stuff up when you start talking about mindfulness and you know, awareness of mistakes and feeling stupid and confusion. Tell me about those kids, Dawn. What you?
Well, that's the thing, and we kind of pride ourselves, like, we do this. You know, I one of the courses that I teach is called Compass, and it's a professional studies program, and we really do school differently. We try to kind of break down the walls of school, and we bring in, you know, the community to help teach, and the kids do almost everything in that program for an authentic audience. But 50% of what we do in that course is top 20 EQ work. And what's really been rewarding is, number one, if the students that are in the class, regardless of if they're taking it because they've never connected with traditional education and they just need to do some school differently, or they're doing it because they are seeking, you know, the college credits and the business professionalism that comes with it, all of them hug onto that EQ work. It's reinforced through our guest instructors and our business partners that is the most important important stuff you can do. We've actually had, we do at Wayzata High School, we actually have made top 20 an elective course. And we actually have had some of our community partners tell the students to put, I've taken top 20 on their LinkedIn and their resume. Because that EQ work is so relevant and so important in the world outside of school, so much more than sometimes some of the IQ, specific skills that they have.
Sure.
Yeah.
My daughter has her second job. Her first job was for me, so it kind of counts. But her first real job, you just nailed it. They didn't ask to see her grades. They didn't ask to have her read Shakespeare out loud. They had a conversation with her and saw her front tire, her EQ incredibly strong. And they're like, yeah, you're the person we want talking to our clients and our customers, et cetera. And weird, she got the job.
Yeah.
Hey, attendees out there, if you got a question for Grace or Dawn, put it in the chat. I'm going to do that. And meanwhile, I'm going to pose a question to you two before we get on. We got about 8 minutes.
I did get a question come in, so I'll go after you.
All right. I just want to pose one to Grace and Dawn. What do you hope for education? Education's a mess right now. We're a mess. We're losing teachers in Colorado. I saw that article. What's your hope for education over the next decade? What do you want to see happen? Not just Wayzata, but education. What's your dream?
So it's funny because Dawn and I had the privilege to basically have that conversation with our PTA at our high school. We were invited to speak at the coffee with the principal. And if we don't seize this opportunity, the acceleration that is happening in education because of the pandemic, to make things different, right? To do things different. We were forced to do it. And now my greatest hope is that we don't abandon the good things that we've learned, the flexibility, the meeting kids where they're at, the alternative assessments, for me, that is my hope, is that we take the good.
Dawn?
Yeah, we don't, I don't think that being in a high school building from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., I hesitate to say this, but I don't think that's the right thing for all of our kids. I think we need choice and voice. I think kids that are rising adults, some of them, it'll serve them well to be in the building with teachers all day. Some of them, this will be an opportunity for them to go do internships, for some of them to do an apprenticeship, for them to work, for them to take care of other family members, to do a job shadow, to do informational interviews. I think the idea of holding teenagers in a building to protect them, I hope that that this pandemic has made us look at the amazing gifts and talents that if we give them a little bit, they'll run with it. And the best way to teach them these EQ skills is to give them an opportunity to practice them and fall forward while they have adults in their lives that can talk them through it. And so I think providing some of those opportunities while they're in high school and letting the adults kind of let them go a little bit, but then have a grounding place where we can come back. So I think education, at least at the high school level, should be a little bit more of a choice. Cool. And it should be a menu for kids to choose from, but for sure an opportunity for them to experience some things that many of us didn't get to do until we were in our 20s. And and we just had our roommates, right, to tell us to listen to our challenges.
I think we should keep standardizing education as long as we have standardized kids. I've not met one. Kevin, you got a question?
Well, two things. I just have to say this out loud because I can just sense when Paul Burnaby is trying to communicate something to me.
What do you got?
Paul, number one, is saying we need to clone these two so they can be trainers and we can ship them around the US. But he's also saying with the frame, one of the ways to see things differently is to create a crisis. Now, we did not create this crisis called the pandemic, but we're in it and we're naturally seeing things differently. And like Grace and Don just said, we have to see education differently and see the flex that we have and the power we have to change things up and truly meet some needs of kids. So I just want to applaud you two for what you're doing. It's unbelievable, and it's so needed.
Great shout out from Kelly, a para at West Middle. She had the training 5 years. She says, I love what Grace and Dawn are doing. The stuff I had from Top 20 changed my life. Thanks, Kelly. Eric Nelson says, are there any other URLs? He's finding stuff about Compass and Dare to Be Real. From Wayzata. Is there anything else we should be pumping from Wayzata that people can look at? Because Eric's doing the
yeah, so just a little thing about Dare to Be Real, and that we encompass Top 20 in there as well, but these are some student leaders who are really charged and motivated to do some work with racial equity, both in our building and our community. And a lot of them have been in the Top 20 course. We are really trying to be better about recognizing that that EQ skills in the dominant culture, right? We want to also celebrate the EQ skills that our students bring from their home language and their home culture, and build a community of learners that celebrates diversity. And so we have a ways to go with that, but that's something that we're—
check it out, people. Check it out. The Compass. You go to Wayzata High School and find the Dare to Be Real in the Compass program. We've got to say goodnight.
Wait, before we say goodnight, Grace.
Yes.
Have you heard anything, and Dawn as well, have you heard anything from some of the younger levels in your district, kindergarten, younger students, any kind of yearning for SEL? If you can answer that in 15 seconds.
Our middle schools have definitely done some work. They've done it through their advisory program. And I do remember talking at a professional development. I'm the coordinator for our building at a district meeting, and even our early learning school was using some of the language, just, modifying it appropriately. Those littles, that's not my expertise, but yeah, they were very interested.
Cool. Great.
Hey, we gotta let you go.
I'm going to send them on back. You are so appreciated, Grace and Dawn.
Love you.
Thank you. It's been such a gift to have you. And then Tom, I'm going to launch a question at you that came in from my friend Monica. So Monica said, we celebrate and teach Top 20 once a week in our middle school. Do you think 8th grade is too young to begin a full-time class?
No, the sooner the better. There's schools doing it from K6. See, we started this program in 9th. I would have preferred 8th. And I'll tell you why, straight shooter. I think the kids the sooner you get them before they start making big decisions, driving, vaping, the deal, that they want to be these early adults. And I think the faster we get them social, emotional, front tire stuff, we might avoid the biggies.
Yep.
One kid told me once, I took your course. He goes, dude, this is prehab. I just got out of rehab. I wish I'd have had this first. I wouldn't have needed the rehab if I had the prehab. So I love starting at middle schools. Cool. Hey, Kevin, what'd you get out of those two tonight?
The biggest thing I got is a reminder of the gifts the kids bring. Even if their grade doesn't showcase something stellar, these kids have gifts and they're essential. And that's my whole purpose in life, is reminding people how great they are. And those two dedicate their lives to making sure those kids are honored. What about you? And then I need to hear about next week's guest. Yep. And then I'm going to tease the next following week's guest.
Yep. Wayzata is one of my favorite schools. I make no bones about that. I just love what those two are doing out there. And we could have had 25 other people from that school on. Their faculty is the size of the nation. So next week, we're going to introduce you to Willow Sweeney next week, one of our founding owners, speakers, authors. You'll meet her, and she's going to bring on a guest from North Carolina named Carmen, and they're going to talk about what's been going on in Mecklenburg, North Carolina. Don't miss the show. Please recruit one other person to watch it with you. We're still trying to grow the audience. Yep. We also want to pump the book, Top 20 Teachers, and we're giving 2 away tonight. Karen Besh from Castle Manorville, you want a book, we're going to send it to you. Woo! Nancy Butterfuss from St. James. Nancy, look for a book coming your way. So you already got one, send it to somebody else.
So Karen, email kevin@top20training.com, send me your address. Nancy, kevin@top20training, send me your address. So we have Carmen Concepcion with Willow next our next Webishow. And the following one, we have a major announcement with our friend Eric from Fan School. And that's a little
So
teaser.
the 16th of March, mark your calendar, is Carmen and Willow, and the 30th of March, 4 weeks from tonight. And by the way, we'll be on regular savings time by then.
Hey, guess what, Tom?
It's time.
It's 8:30. Thanks for joining us on the Inside Ride. Bye-bye.
Be curious.
Be it.